Now it's time for Culture Talk, where we talk about culturally relevant topics that you can use to start conversations about your faith. I am joined today with astrophysicist Jeff Zweerink. Thank you for joining us, Jeff.
Sandra, I always look forward to being on the show with you.
I'm so excited to talk to you because we're going to be talking about NASA's Perseverance rover that landed on Mars just recently. What an exciting just thing to watch and see live. Can you help us understand, first of all, what happened for those who maybe missed it? What landed on Mars? What was it? What did it do? And what is it going to do?
So this is one of NASA's latest missions to Mars to explore various things about the planet. Follows in the lines of Spirit and Opportunity, Curiosity, other rovers that have been launched to Mars, the Mars Space Laboratory, that just to explore. And ultimately, one of the big things they're trying to do is see if there's life on Mars or any evidence of past life or any current life. And, there's some missions from back in the 70s that kind of gave tantalizing hits that maybe there was. And so this is just kind of following up on that. And this is a particularly exciting rover because it is by far the most difficult landing that NASA has ever done. And to see it come off cleanly and smoothly is really pretty remarkable.
Well, let's get into that landing because offline you were explaining kind of what it took for it to land. But I think our viewers would be super curious to hear, like, how did they even make that happen from so far away? That's pretty amazing.
Well, that's there are kind of two spectacular aspects about this. One is that it's the most complicated landing we've ever done. And two, that it was all done with no human intervention. So as the craft is coming into Mars, as it's getting up, maybe a couple hundred miles above the atmosphere, it's traveling something on the order of 12,000 miles an hour. So this is really coming in hot. If that just comes in and hits the ground, you end up with this pile of rubble and nothing happens. And so there's a sequence of three things that happens in at various times to make sure that the craft gets slowed down so that the rover can land. And the first thing that happens is that the craft orients itself so that it starts streaming through the atmosphere. And even though Mars' atmosphere is less dense than the Earth, that heats up, there's got a heat shield, and that friction with the air actually slows it down. And so it goes from about 12,000 miles per hour down to about 900 miles per hour. It takes a few minutes to do that. And because the air can be different densities, they have to guide it through that so that it doesn't get knocked off course. Wow. Once that happens, then it deploys a chute that's about 70 feet across. So it's this really large parachute that now slows the craft down from 900 miles an hour down to about 200 miles an hour. And while, this minute or so where this is going on, the lid pops off so that the cameras can start, and they actually start taking images of the ground, and they're finding the craft is looking for a place where it can set down, where it's not got cliffs and boulders, where it can set down reliably. And so it's kind of navigating itself, making adjustments. And then once it gets slowed down to about 200 miles an hour, it jettisons the parachute and it fires some rockets on this crane, and it slows it down to basically just hovering. It gets rid of all the horizontal motion, it gets rid of all the vertical motion. And then the last steps are this crane actually lowers the rover down onto the planet, detaches it from its cables, and then it flies off. And all of that is done with absolutely no human intervention, because the whole sequence takes about 7 minutes. A round trip signal to Mars actually takes 11 minutes. So by the time they found out anything was going wrong, the thing would have hit the planet anyway. So this all happened autonomously or remotely. It's just really cool that they actually got that to work, and it worked flawlessly.
That is amazing. So basically they kind of set the dials or whatever it is they have to do, and then let it go, and then cross their fingers and hope that it lands. Is that kind of what?
More or less, there's some things where they put on their systems that allowed it to correct and make sure that it got where it was going and it got into a safe place. And so, some sense the craft had some intelligence built into it so that it could navigate the inevitable things that came up and make sure it stayed on course. But like I said, landed cleanly, started taking beautiful pictures, incredible video of actually the descent and the landing. It's really a pretty impressive accomplishment.
Well, that is absolutely spectacular. And it just goes to show the ingenuity of humans. It's pretty amazing. Now, you said that for this rover, the intent is to then look for life. So that can kind of make some people curious, especially Christians, wondering what does that mean, and how does that affect our faith. So how do we even go about kind of having that conversation about this spectacular just feat, and then how we respond to that?
That's a really good question. And one of the things, as I have been doing apologetics over the last 15 years, is just my thinking about how are we going to explore Mars? What are we going to find? Has helped me refine that. So I'm thinking accurately about what Christianity actually says, and I can be at the same time excited about what the science is going to find. Because at the end of the day, I'm convinced they're going to be saying the same thing. But the Perseverance rover is looking for is signs of life. And so it's got instruments on the rover that are going to dig up samples and package them, hopefully that we can get back later. It's got instruments that it can use to analyze and look for life. And this is, as I've been watching over the last 15 years, one of the things that has been shown is that Mars actually had liquid water on it in the past. And that was one of those things that actually caused me to think about, okay, so what does the Bible have to say about this? Because my thought was, well, where there's water, there's life. And so if there's water on Mars, there's life. Well, when you go look at the scripture, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was formless and void. Darkness was on the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. So even though earth was covered in water, it was still hostile to and devoid of life. Only by God's active intervention does he now transform that into a planet that can host life. And so the fact that we find water on Mars isn't any big deal. But let's go out and explore and see what we find, because it will actually help us understand the scriptures better and the work that God did, not only to fashion Earth for preparation for life, but what he might have done other places in the cosmos.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. That is a lot to unpack, but thank you for really helping us understand what happened and what they're going to be looking for. So if you as a viewer are curious about this topic, go to reasons.org and search for habitable planets. We'll see you next time.